Hey everyone, welcome to the CopeCareConnect podcast. I'm Jimmy, and these are my co-hosts Cassandra, Robin, and Ainslin. Today we have an action-packed episode for you. We're going to talk about graduate students and how to appropriately ask, "Are you okay?" and how to respond. We're also going to have a guest speaker on today, Julie Fennell. She is a health promotion educator with the Student Health Services at Brock University. But before we get to that, we're going to get some background on the situation. So, what makes asking, "Are you okay?" so difficult for graduate students?
Well, I would say there's two aspects when it comes to graduate students. The first one would be isolation with smaller classes and like smaller friend groups, a lot of individual work instead of group work like undergrad students, as well as the general stigma to talking about mental health, especially between young men, and how opening up can be incredibly difficult, especially to people who may not be your peers necessarily or anybody with out the same experiences as you specifically.
So, how do you guys think we can overcome this stigma around asking, "Are you okay?"
I think there are many resources that you can use that Brock University offers to students, such as the Student Wellness and Accessibility Center that will be discussed in further details with Julie. So stick around for more information.
Yes, absolutely. Now, what are some key points for graduate students that they should take away from this podcast today that makes asking, "Are you okay?" easier?
Well, when someone is reaching out, you should always know that it means that they're caring for you. You should make sure that the time is appropriate, be respectful of their privacy, along with being supportive, listening attentively, offering support, also avoiding any judgment.
Yes, that's perfect. Those are some great tips out there. So now we're gonna move along and speak with Julie here. A little side note before we begin our podcast today. In between sections of our interview with Julie Fennell here, we're going to be breaking down parts of what she says because it was a really in-depth interview, and I really appreciate her being so transparent and telling us a lot about SWAC. So we're also going to try and discuss and interact with the content that she provided us in this podcast. Okay, Cassandra, you take it away.
So we wanted to thank you for coming on and discussing the topic of graduate students with us. And we are happy you were able to join us. We're going to get started if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Julie, can you tell us a little bit about the Student Wellness and Accessibility Center?
Yes, it's made up, Student Wellness and Accessibility Center, or we sometimes call it SWAC, is made up of four main groups. To start, it's the Student Health Services, which we want students to think of as their doctor's office away from home. Mm-hmm. It includes nurses and docs. We have mental health nurses in there. We have 2 psychiatrists that come in to the center to see students. Best way to see psychiatrists is the only way is to get referred through the docs to the psychiatrist, and wait for that would be a few weeks to a month at the very longest to see someone. In the community, it would be 8 months to a year. So it's good access. We also have a doc and a social worker that comes in that specializes on eating disorders to the clinic. During the regular season, during the regular non-pandemic, we have walk-in drop-ins that happen at different locations during the day, as well as booked appointments. Right now, we have booked appointments that are virtual, online, between the regular hours, and if the doc indicates that they need to see the student in person, we work something out at Brock so that the student can come on campus and see the doc in person as well. And it's all the typical things that a doc would do. We also have something called personal counseling, which we ask students to call the 1-833 Brock 33 number. And through that number, they can book an appointment with a counselor. Again, in regular circumstances, it would be on campus. This year, it's a virtual appointment where students talk to counselors this way. And it's booked through the 1-833 number. And we also allow students to choose their counselor. And we also acknowledge that if a counselor doesn't connect with a student, that they're completely free to choose another one. Right. And because it's quite often that actually there's research on it that it takes a few different counselors before you find one that you connect with.
Sure.
So it's important that students understand that, you know, the one tryout didn't work, that they could try again. They so that's personal counseling.
All right. So thank you so much, Julie, for that point. That was actually a really helpful piece of information that she just pointed out, the fact that you can choose your own doctor at SWAC. I personally did not know that before this interview with her. So that was really good to know. And I hope that piece of information she just shared resonates with you guys as well and is something that you guys will keep in the back of your minds. So I'm going to turn this to my co-hosts now, and I'm going to ask them, what do you guys think about being able to choose your own doctor when you go to SWAC for assistance?
I think this makes students feel like they have a type of control over their situation and makes them feel like their mental health does matter.
Yeah, I also think it's super important to be able to pick your own doctor, because if you go to the doctor and you're not comfortable being there, you're less likely to open up to them about any problems you might have.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Do you guys think this would be helpful to graduate students specifically?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it would be important to graduate students specifically because they may have less opportunities to open up to each other with their own like mental health or even physical health, given the fact that a lot of graduate students work extremely hard and extremely long hours.
That's very true. Also, it helps because lots of graduate students are not from here. Most of them probably saw Brock as an opportunity to get away from their hometown to pursue their education. And it's helpful because they can try and feel out the doctors that we have, you know, someone
Yeah,
that
for
works for
sure.
them or doesn't work for them. And because personally, I'm going to be moving away as well. And this is something that I hope my future university would have too, because this would be really helpful if you're not familiar with the area. It's definitely something to keep in mind. So the next part of our interview with Julie here, she's going to be breaking down the events that SWAC offers. And they do events frequently, and you're going to hear her mention that.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's very cool. I see on the Brock website there's lots of like weekly events that the SWAC offers. I see there's like drop-ins and midterm preparation. Can I ask like generally what the turnout is like for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was just meeting about that. Some of them are really good. So we do a sleep workshop. We had 18 people come. And sometimes the COVID stress ones will have 10 to 12 people come. And then some of the ones have a smaller turnout. Depends on how specific it seems to be more broad. Students are interested, more specific, less students are interested.
Yeah.
We did a sexual health last week and there was 20 something people in it. It was the dildos and dildon'ts.
I saw that.
Sad I missed it.
So Julie just gave us a really great foundation of the stuff that SWAC is doing throughout the school year for everyone, every Brock student, not just graduate students. I love that she gave us specific examples, especially the dill do's and dill don'ts. I was not expecting that, but it's good to know anyways. Definitely, if anyone heard an event on this podcast that intrigued them, I would recommend checking it out. SWAC actually hosts like really cool events, and they're catered to our audience. Since we're young adults, they try to tune it to make sure that it's appealing for us, if you will. So now asking my co-hosts, was there any events that you guys were interested in that Julie mentioned?
Well, outside from what Julie mentioned, I'm on the Experience BU website to look at different SWAC events. We've got the Wellness Hub, one of the recurring ones. We also have some getting ready for finals events that are on the 29th and the 31st of March. Those will be good for stressed out times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So definitely everyone listening to this podcast, check out SWAC's events. They're fantastic. I would recommend participating in at least one when you're a Brock student. So this next part of our interview with Julie, she's going to go more in depth into what graduate students are going through in graduate school, which I definitely think is an important part of why we're here today. So we're definitely going to talk about this after we listen to this tidbit that she talks about. So stay tuned.
Challenges that graduate students face that undergraduate students don't seem to face. The isolation, right? Especially in upper year, you're not sitting in a class with a bunch of people, doing a bunch of projects together, connecting with people. You're sort of, especially if you're from outside, you're kind of parachuting in, you don't know people, and you don't have as many opportunities to meet people, to connect. And your biggest connection is that advisor or your professor that you're working with, right?
For sure. We're just going to move on to our topic of asking, are you okay? In regards to asking, are you okay, and responding helpfully, are there some tips that you can provide to make asking this question appropriate?
I think that the most important thing to realize is that people are nervous about asking if someone is okay. But I want people to understand that even if you ask, no matter what awkward way you ask the question, the other person on the other end hears that they matter to you and that they've been noticed. So whatever way you ask the question, and you're going to fumble through it, no matter what you say, even if you ask it and you go, God, that was a really horrible way of asking that question, to understand that other person goes, they've noticed me and I'm important to them. I'm worthy of asking that question. I think that's huge, a huge piece. So a hint would be to identify what you've noticed, right? Specifically, I've noticed you haven't been online as much lately. I haven't noticed you haven't been to class. I noticed, so you notice things have changed. I noticed you haven't showered in a month. No, I wouldn't say that. But you would say something that you've noticed, that a change, and that's a really good way to start the conversation. And they may have a really good reason for that thing that you've noticed that has nothing to do with mental health. But then that's interesting too, right? My computer's broken, so I can never do this. Oh, okay. It must be hard to be in university with a broken computer, right? I'm doing all my work on my phone, right? So, maybe then there's something else. I know someone who's selling a computer, or let's go look at used computers, or right. It's not always, I think just opening up that door is so important. Sometimes it's, I don't have any food, right? I don't have any money. And so it's a issue that's turning into mental health, right? So finding out what the issue is so important. I noticed this, and they're like, oh, it's because my computer, I don't have food, I don't have this, I don't have that. And you're like, oh, you know what? Let's work together to see if we can fix this problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
In a way, the best way to approach it would be to not stress about the details of how you say it, but also to look at it in more of a holistic view. It might not just be mental health, but it can circle back and affect the mental health of your friend.
Excellent. It's exactly it. So just identify what you noticed and ask how they are. Is a really big one. And I think realizing that you can notice things online, right? You can notice in their language they used, either by text or what they put on social media, or in a paper that they write or don't write, right? Whether they attend virtual events and suddenly stop attending, right? So you're looking for a change, which is hard to do with grad students because you don't know them very well. So if you don't see the change, but you see something that's just a little disengaged, I would say that would be worth, is there some way I can encourage you to come to these events with me? Right. And then no, I'm not comfortable. Well, why? You can ask questions. You feel like you're being nosy, but there's that. I talk about the difference between being helpfully nosy and nosy. Right? And so being helpfully nosy is you're just trying to figure out what's up. and you don't, a nosy is you want that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
just
closer to gossip.
So that was the end of our interview with Julie here. Like she said, if you think your friend needs help, it doesn't hurt to ask. It's not that you're being nosy, it's just that you care. It's the way you ask it, the timing of it, and all of that stuff that makes it more about caring about the other person than just gossip. All right. Thank you so much, Julie. That was Julie Fennell, everyone. That was a great few minutes that she gave us. Very insightful. So, what did you guys like about that conversation with Julie?
I'd say one of the most interesting things is hearing about all the SWAC weekly meetings, able to drop in, and the amount of people that normally actually attend. So if you're kind of nervous about dropping in for something, you can drop into one of the more open-ended events. There'll be more people there. You're less likely to feel singled out, stuff like that.
Yeah, her giving examples of some upcoming events or events that had passed just makes SWAC engaging and makes students want to attend these events. I think it was really important when she touched on how asking, "Are you okay?" You need to address what is different about that individual and how you can properly ask, "Are you okay?"
Additionally, it was very informative. She had a lot to say about SWAC and the hub and different support and services offered for students that we can all,
Take home.
yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, yeah. So, thank you so much, Julie, for coming on to the show today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So, thank you so much for listening today, everyone. This has been the CopeCareConnect podcast. CopeCareConnect is supported by the Faculty of Applied Health Sciences at Brock University and the Student Wellness and Accessibility Center. Visit CopeCareConnect.ca for more details. I'm Jimmy.
I'm Cassandra.
Robin?
Meansland.
And this has been the Cope Care Connect podcast. See you guys next time. Have a great night.